My name is Blair Moss, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this town hall about saving our historic fairgrounds and rodeo. There are a few purposes for us having you gather with us tonight. First off is when our group found out that there was possibly a plan to move the fairgrounds and rodeo, we started investigating and talking to people and researching. And one thing that we learned in this process is that there are a lot of different opinions and thoughts that people have about the history of the fairgrounds and the rodeo. There are just a lot of thoughts that different thoughts and ideas that people have about the history of the fairgrounds and rodeo. And so like different ideas of who donated the land, who's in control of the land, is there a deed restriction? So we've been investigating that, and our first speaker is going to be Mark Jackowski, and he is going to give all of us a legal history of the fairgrounds and rodeo, so that we're all on the same page of what the facts are. And I think that's really important. And second, when we got involved with this, another thing we found is that there are a lot of people in our community who don't understand the history of the people involved with the fairgrounds and the rodeo and all the things that go on the fairgrounds. And we're so lucky to have tonight Mary Martin speaking. She has been involved with the fairground and the rodeo in so many ways for decades, and she knows more about all of this than most of us have forgotten. So we're very lucky to have her speak on this tonight. And then another reason we're having this meeting tonight is that a lot of people are saying, why do we even need to save the fairgrounds and the rodeo? The lease has been extended to 2026. What's going on? What's even the problem? And so Rebecca Bextel is going to be speaking to why we need to do this now and what is happening and what is going on. So again, that we're all on the same page and we understand why this is necessary. And then we're going to be sharing a short video that Peter, and now Peter, your last name again, I'm going to say it wrong, and I don't want to, Pestrude, did I say it? Okay, Peter has done for us, and it's going to be a short video that's going to highlight some of the reasons that the fairgrounds and the rodeo are so important to our community. If it highlighted all the reasons, it would be like a 5 to 10 hour video, but we're just going to highlight some of the reasons. So it's a short video. We know you're going to enjoy that. And then we're going to open up the evening to questions, and they allow you guys to ask us questions of things that might have come up that we didn't address. So we'd love to have you participate in that. And then we'll have an end with a call to action. So there are going to be, and then there are going to be two things that we're not going to spend a lot of time on tonight that I just want to clear up. And one of those things is the $30 million SPET tax that's been proposed to buy new land. We're not going to be discussing that because, one, it's a big if the SPEC tax will pass and happen, and if there will be new land found. So we think it's a big risk to risk this fairgrounds and rodeo property and put all our eggs in that basket and then end up losing what we have here in town. And also, even if that all happens and it gets moved out of town and into county property, we still think that it is important that this property is preserved and stays in town and is so integral to the fabric of our community that it stays right here where it is. And again, Mary Martin will be speaking more to that. And another thing that we're not going to spend too much time on tonight is affordable housing. We all agree that Jackson has an affordable housing problem, and there are so many different ideas and solutions to that, and we are not going to solve that problem tonight. But one thing that we want to make clear and that we believe is that the solution to affordable housing in Jackson is not to put it on the fairgrounds and the rodeo. And we would like to give an example, an illustration of this. New York City has a big affordable housing problem, and they have a large piece of property that they could increase their supply with, and that's called Central Park. Now, no one in New York City would ever consider taking Central Park and putting affordable housing on it to solve their problem, because it is such an iconic part of Central Park. It's such a big reason why tourists come to New York City, and it is such a great part of the city that adds to the quality of life of the citizens who live in that city. And that is exactly how we feel about the fairgrounds and rodeo, that it is iconic, that it's integral to the fabric of our town, and that it improves the quality of life of our citizens. So we hope you will join us tonight by the end, and we'll have all these calls to action, how you can help us to save this historic fairgrounds and rodeo. And this is just such an important part of our town, and if we lose it, we will not get it back again. It is irreplaceable, so we cannot let this happen. All right, so I'm going to introduce Mark Jackowski, who is going to go take you through the legal history of this property.
My name is Mark Jackowski, and the last name is spelled, for you Irishmen, Jackowski. I'm an attorney, and I think it's important. I'm going to be telling you some things, and you're probably wondering to yourselves, who is this guy? Why should I believe him? Well, I'm going to try to put some of that doubt away. As I said, I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for 30-plus years. I'm admitted to practice in New York and more recently, Wyoming. What I did before I moved to Wyoming is that I was a federal prosecutor, as they say. You'll see plenty of them on TV. I happen to be one of them, but I don't appear on TV that often. But anyway, I'm a former federal prosecutor, and I'm now basically a defense attorney, and more recently I've been involved in what I would call constitutional litigation with respect to what I believe, and I know some of the people in this room believe, is overreach by the local, state, and federal authorities. Now, that's basically who I am. And some of you people know me, and some of you don't. But anyway, so this is what we did. We basically conducted an investigation into the ownership of the rodeo grounds. The reason being because we had heard initially that the rodeo grounds had been donated to the county or to the city with restrictions on its use. The restrictions being that the property could only be used for fair purposes or for agricultural purposes. So we set out to determine whether or not that was verifiable or documentable. And it turns out that it's not. And the reason why we started out there is because if this property came with restrictions, we wouldn't be having this discussion. Legally, neither the town nor the county nor anyone else could use this for any purpose other than for fairgrounds or agricultural purposes. So how did we start this investigation? We started by talking to people. We started by talking with Phil Wilson and Hal Johnson, who are presently involved in running the rodeo, and they gave us certain information. That information took us to a gentleman by the name of Skippy Wright Clark, whose grandmother was the one who played an integral role in this rodeo property, which I'll get into later. Then we ended up speaking to various officials. We spoke with Rachel Grimes, who's the head, who runs the fairgrounds on behalf of the county and of the town. Then we spoke with certain officials with the Fair Board, actually a number of them. Then we spoke with some public officials, including people within the county attorney's office. And then we looked at documents, and the documents that we looked at involved a trip to the county clerk's office during which Blair, Rebecca, and myself and a child of Blair's examined dusty court records going back literally to 1905. So we've tried to do our homework. So this is basically what we've found. In 1905, the Carnes family homesteaded the property that is now known as the fairgrounds. It was included within the property that is now known as Carnes Meadows. The Carnes family got a homesteading deed in 1905 from the federal government. The person who was president at that time, believe it or not, was Theodore Roosevelt. That's really when the story of this piece of property starts. The property stayed the property that's called the Fairgrounds stayed within the Carnes family until approximately 1941, actually in October of 1941, when the Carnes family sold the piece of property, and here is the deed right here. I have a copy of it. If anybody wants to see it, they're more than welcome to. Ask me. But they sold it to two people, apparently a husband and wife team, Lester H. Dobbs and his wife. They were from Salt Lake City. The property was sold for $5,450. That very same day, it was on October 28th of 1941. That very same day, the Dobbs husband and wife sold it not to the county, they sold it to the town of Jackson for $5,450. So it looks like it was a wash sale purchased by a nominee. We tried to, I do not have much more information to tell you about who Lester Dobbs was. I don't know where the money came from. I don't know what the exact deal with, but just looking at the dates of the transaction, day one, person X buys it. Day two, person X transfers the same piece of property for the same price to the next owner. So it looks like Dobbs was a nominee for somebody. Now, what's interesting about that transaction is that the deed itself was not recorded for some reason, unbeknownst to us, until on or about March 13th of 1945. So this piece of property initially was transferred right before Pearl Harbor and was recorded right before VE Day, which I'm not mistaken was, I think, April or May 6th of 1945. I can't tell you why that happened because the people who participated in that transaction aren't around to tell us, or else we would have asked them. We tried to find out who Dobbs was, but again, we couldn't. So the first thing that the investigation revealed is that the city bought this property from the Carnes back in 1941. When we look at the deed, okay, there are no restrictions on this deed at all. That means legally that this property could be used by the town of Jackson for whatever purpose. That's legally. Morally and ethically are another matter. And those issues, Ms. Mary Martin, who's lived here for 40 years and knows the history of this place, stone cold, is going to tell you all about. But the next thing that happens of note with respect to this property, and this is where Skippy Wright Clark comes in indirectly, is that an entity known as the Jackson Hole Rodeo and Racing Association got a lease on this property from the town of Jackson. Now, the Jackson Hole Rodeo and Racing Association was a group of influential individuals who used this property for the purpose of rodeoing and racing. And I'll read to you from the lease. Whereas the lessee, and that is the Jackson Hole Rodeo and Racing Association, is a certain corporation whose object and purpose is to stimulate amusement enterprises for the town of Jackson by operating, staging, maintaining, and promoting rodeos, racing, polo, cutter racing, ball games, and various other year-round activities. And this is interesting language. Such operations will inure to the economic benefit of the town of Jackson and furnish recreational facilities for the people of the town of Jackson as a public use. Now, what that tells you is that the town of Jackson leased this piece of property back in 1949 to the Rodeo and Racing Association with the understanding that it was going to be used for rodeoing and racing. And that was what it has been historically used for ever since. That lease, however, did not last forever. That lease was transferred to Elena Hunt, and that's Skippy Wright. I keep on referencing Skippy Wright Clark, but his family is an integral part of this story. Anyway, that piece of property stayed under the control of Elena Hunt until 1964, when Elena Hunt quit-claimed her interest in the lease back to the town of Jackson. And the town of Jackson was always the owner of this. And the only language that we found of any legal import was the language in this lease. But this lease ended in 1964, and it really has no legal force and effect in the days that have come since. Nevertheless, as Mary Martin will tell you, and you guys know a lot better than I, that's principally what the fairgrounds have been used for. So that, and then after it was quit-claimed by Ms. Hunt, it went back to the Teton County Fair. So the lease with the Rodeo Association ended. It was quit-claimed to Elena Hunt. Elena Hunt quit-claimed it to the Teton County Fair. And that's what I have in this document. So when we look at this, and since then, as I said, it has been used for purposes of a rodeo and for a county fair. But when we look at all of these documents, the key is to look at the initial warranty deed from Mr. Dobbs to the town of Jackson back in November and October of 1941, and there are no restrictions on it. And the town of Jackson has continuously held ownership and title to this property since then. Now, where are we, before we get to where we are today? I mean, Blair mentioned that there is some discussion with respect to a spet tax on this property. You should know that that is not the first time that there has been discussion with respect to a spet tax on this property. The first time was back in 1996. There was a spet proposal to buy the property over where the Stilson parking lot is now. 160 acres for, believe this number, $1.4 million. What a deal. Wish we could do that now, but we can't. That spet proposal did not pass. It didn't pass for two reasons, principally. One reason is that a number of people who then lived in Wilson didn't want the noise and crowds associated with the rodeo and what they perceived to be their backyard. That was one reason. The other reason, and this reason holds true today as well, and that is because the property, the rodeo and the fair were perceived to be, as in fact they are, economic drivers of economic activity in the town of Jackson. People come to Jackson for the fair, they come to Jackson for the rodeo, they stay downtown, and they expend money when they do so. So just as this was an economic influencer back in 1996, it's still an economic influencer today. So now I'm going to take you forward to present day. And as Blair said, one of the reasons, or the principal reason why we're here, is because there is a lease in place with respect to this property. And that lease ends on or about December 31 of 2026. And the lease is between the town of Jackson and the Teton County Fair Board. Unless that lease is renewed or some other arrangements are made, there will be, legally, there will be no more fairgrounds across the street. There will be no more rodeo across the street unless, as Blair is going to ask us all to do later, some action is taken. And we hope that a number of the people who are interested enough to attend this meeting this evening will be interested enough to take action. And that, what that means in substantial part is letting our elected officials know that we want this property to stay and be used for the purposes which it has historically been used. Now, you should know that as I said at the beginning of my remarks, we have spoken with some people from the Fair Board and the person who operates the fairgrounds, and those are two different things on behalf of the county. The Fair Board, as I understand it, and has been published in the newspapers, is interested in moving the fair from the place where it's currently located across the street. They basically have two reasons. One, they have problems and issues with respect to the space. They don't perceive, or some of them don't perceive, that it's sufficient to run the activities that they presently run, and they also want to have additional activities to run as part of the county fair. They will tell you that. As I understand it, they have not taken a quote-unquote official position on that. But one of the reasons why they are in that position, and I'm going to close with this, is because over the years, what was originally a 25.6 acre plot has been diminished in size. It's been eroded. It's died the death of 1,000 cuts. It's now 12.3 acres. And the reason for that is that your elected officials from both the town and county have looked at this piece of property as manna from heaven. If there is something that they want to do that they don't have room to do, or the intent to put somewhere else, they say, well, we own this piece of property, let's take it from the fairgrounds. So that has been why, over the years, this property has diminished in size. And that's why the fairgrounds finds itself in the predicament in which it's in. Having said that, I think it's incumbent upon all of us to tell the elected officials, both town and county, that this piece of property has historic value to the citizens and isn't here as a grab bag for everyone who happens to get elected to a term of office to take a slice or to take a cut out of. This has a greater use and a greater purpose. You don't see, and I'm from New York, as you might have been able to tell. You don't see New Yorkers taking wax at Central Park. That's sacred. This ground is sacred and should remain sacred to all of us. And thank you.
I am a reluctant speaker, but I was willing to come and advocate for this piece of land and community prize that I have shared with, I think, most of you in the room. We've put blood, sweat, and equity into what is the fairgrounds. You know, I've worked with the community this is my 47th year. Much of my time has been working with 4-H and the 4-H families. I've been extremely involved with the fair for all the years that I was responsible for 4-H. And for a decade or so, I helped market the Jackson Hole Rodeo. But more importantly, I worked side by side with amazing people who we would now call the old-timers of Jackson Hole, and I'm kind of fondly calling them the old-timers because I've now become one of them. My work as a community development educator has helped me understand that there's research behind successful and sustainable communities. We have probably heard sustainable to the point of where we're nauseated, but there is some research that stands for what Jackson has going for it as a sustainable and a successful community. And let me tell you about those community capitals. One is natural. That's the air, the wind, the sun, the minerals, the wildlife, plants, and the landscape. You would agree, we have a tremendous natural capital. Another is financial. That's a community's ability to save, to manage debt, to bring in revenue, and to collect tax revenues. I work in the 5 southwest counties most of the time, and sometimes half of the western state. We are an envy in what we have right now in our capital, or financial capital, and in our built capital. That's things like sewer, water systems, transportation, electronic communication, fairgrounds, soccer fields, housing, hospitals, and schools. Political capital is the ability for a community to organize itself, to have communication, voice, and power up and down the political stream, and the ability for the political entities to bring resources back into the community. We are an envy of a lot of the counties around us in that area. Human capital is the population, and this is where I love Jackson. I mean, we are educated, we are creative, we are diverse, we're healthy, and we have as a community great self-esteem. Social capital is how we organize as groups. It's how we have our collective identity, how we share our sense of future, how we work together, how we have, I don't know about this one, depersonalization of politics, but how we have an acceptance of views. And I think it's also why so many people want to live here also, because we are a unique kind of people. And cultural capital, that's the sense of place. That is what this fairgrounds represents to me, and I think many of you and many of the 4-H kids that have grown up using this ground. It's our way of knowing, it's our history. Cultural capital is our recognition of our heritage. It's how we celebrate as a community. It determines how we see the world, what we take for granted, what we value, and how we look at ourselves. You know, when I moved here, and I'm sure many of you remember seeing and have seen the sign, which I think summarized what our cultural capital is all about, is howdy partner, yonder lies Jackson Hole, the last of the Old West. So I wanted you to understand that, because this piece of property is a tremendous example of all of those capitals. It was, in my understanding, acquired, and we've just had that explained to us. It's been primarily used for the purpose of the community to come together and celebrate who we are, our agricultural and our Western heritage, and our sense of family and community. In the past, who managed the fairgrounds wasn't as important as that we had the rodeo and the fairgrounds as part of our life. County and city governments have had to grow, and back then, you know, it really didn't matter who managed stuff. Today it does kind of matter, and I think for years the county through the Fair Board managed and financed changes on this fairgrounds, and they used tremendous social capital to create the structures and the things that make up the fair. There was a time, I think about 10 or 15 years ago, that the city decided they could better manage the rodeo contract. And so they started doing more formal agreements between the city and county at that time. Prior to that, the Fair Board just did, and this was the fairgrounds, and the fair was given $1 million to run the fair. And I believe that's a state statute that there's money to be given to the operation of the fair. The rodeo is a major economic asset to our tourist industry, and the fact that people can walk to it is an immeasurable gift to us as a community who are already overwhelmed with traffic. Many agreements in Jackson historically have been verbal and a handshake, and I'm sure that everyone in this room would agree with me. We remember, you know, Ralph agreed with, you know, Melvin, and they shook hands, and this is why we don't pay water fees, and this is why we don't do this, and this is why we. So I believe that there was an intent that this was a rodeo and fairgrounds. It's a fact of life that memories fade. New people get elected to serve, and simply I believe that people don't know what they don't know. I don't think that the reason we're here tonight is because our electeds are against our Western heritage or our way of life. I just don't think they understand the importance of what this place is to the heritage of our community. So I'm going to give you an abbreviated timeline. I'm offering it to offer some of you a better idea of how the merits of this place qualify as historically and culturally significant in my mind. The rodeo arena, or the rodeo, has been used, we've been told, since late 40s. In the 50s, a livestock building was erected for the fair. The wooden rodeo bleachers were built in the 60s. They put in a tennis court in the 70s. The mid-70s found some kids smoking in our livestock arena, and Skip Wright Clark, I believe, was on the fair board at that time, and they burnt it down. So we lost our livestock building. But in the early 80s, the town of Jackson decided that they were going to build an office building over here in the corner. The mayor at that time assured me that that was only a temporary use, as the town of Jackson intended to have its public works moved to Adams Canyon in the very near future, and that would be the home of the fair office sometime down the road. When I moved here in 1975, I came here in February of 1975, there was not a park and rec board or department. Sometime in the end of 1979, first part of 80s, I remember when Jack Frappert came to a fair board meeting and said, you know, we really need just to have a little piece of the fairgrounds we need to have a garage to put a truck in our snowplow. So Fair Board, I didn't tell you this, the most enjoyable group I have worked with in my 47 years here has been the Fair Board members. They are the hardest working county board that we have, and I work with a lot of the boards. They put blood, sweat, and equity into running this fair. So we gave the Parks and Rec this little barn, or this little garage space. You'll look today, the Parks and Rec has now got 1/3 of the south side of the fairgrounds, and it's an absolute tearjerker to drive into our parking lot and see that it's assigned parking now for somebody's housing project. And if you look at the town of Jackson in their public works, they haven't moved to Adams Canyon. They've taken 1/3 of the south, or half of the south side of the fairgrounds for the public works. So let me go back to the fire. We had a kid smoking, and he burnt down the livestock building, so the fair board started putting up tents. And if you remember, we used to put tents up every year to celebrate fair. Well, sometime in the 90s, I think it was the early 90s, we had a high altitude tornado come through here, and it blew the fair away. And so after they went running and looking for all the cows and the horses and the pigs and the chickens and the rabbits and everything that had blown away and got all the kids home, everybody was relieved that the only casualty was we couldn't find a rabbit. So from that time, the Fair Board decided we needed to have a safer place to exhibit than in tents. So they built the building across the street with the fair office in the front of it and the livestock pavilion in the back, with the intent that that was going to eventually become a community facility or community gathering building. The county components of this grounds have been built with sweat equity. It's not been just something, oh, the government's going to build something for us, like so many projects are. Hundreds of people in our community have put time, equity, money, sweat, tears, and a lot of conversation into getting the facilities built that are on this building. So let me start with this building. This was my pride and joy, the exhibit hall. 4-H raised $40,000 to put in the floor. Extension homemakers sold thousands of cookies and cakes and pies and raffled quilts so they could come up with $25,000 so that the community would have a kitchen. The county gave the Fair Board the money to put up the tin. So we had an exhibit hall, and everybody was so incredibly proud of that. A real-life consequence of who owns and manages the grounds can be seen in this facility. Right now, the Fair Board doesn't have a long enough lease to qualify to dump a bunch of money in to fix it up. The city has individuals who see it as a possible garage or a workshop or something else other than a community space. And this is probably the most widely used facility in town. It's the only affordable place for many families. And I hate to say this, but I'm going to. A lot of our Hispanic brothers and sisters, this is the only place they can have a family event. And I just hate that it's just allowed to sit here decaying, because I know how hard our old timers worked to build this for the community. So let's go to across the street. You know, we now temporarily have the fire hall in the livestock pavilion. I'm wondering how many of us think that's going to be a temporary use of our livestock pavilion. And then we have the Heritage Arena. That was another huge community project, and I'm looking out here and seeing, I think half the people in this room worked on creating the Heritage Arena. We wanted a place where it would be safe to come and do agricultural agricultural Western kind of events where we didn't have to be slipping and sliding on the ice. The intent was that that was going to be an exhibit hall or an exhibition hall and a community center where there could be dances, but then the fire code later, after it was built, this was after it was built, new people came and the fire code and the health inspectors decided that you can't feed people where horses and cows are doing their thing. And you also need a lot more restrooms than what we have in that place to have it be used with people. So I personally believe that this is too valuable of a piece of a community asset for us to remove. In my opinion, the slicing and dicing of this fairgrounds has to stop. We as residents of Jackson Hole stand at the precipice of losing what makes community. We can become just a bunch of rooms to live in rather than a place where we can live, work, and play. With each person that comes into Jackson, I know many of us know about NIMBY, not in my backyard, but I've also come to notice, and it was something I noticed when I would sit in on fair board meetings. People would move here because it was so idyllic and it was so wonderful, and we still have people doing that. I just love Jackson. I'm moving here. It's the greatest place in the world. And then let's move the clock forward about 8 months. You know, Jackson would be much better if we could put in a botanical gardens like they had back home in Cincinnati. And we should do it at the fairgrounds. Oh, Jackson would be really wonderful if we could have a zoo like we had in Boston. You know, and the fairgrounds would be the perfect place to do it. Oh, I know. Jackson really needs an Olympic-sized water park, and the fairgrounds would be a perfect place for us to do that. We're going to build an Olympics because that's what we had in Palm Beach. The Fair Board has dealt with those kinds of requests annually forever. Folks, Jackson is not, nor should become like places that people have chosen to leave to live here. Thank you. When I was running for county commissioner, and I hope all of you voted for me, but my eyes were really opened because I was asked to come and meet with a group of people who wanted us to tear out the boardwalks, put cement down. They wanted a guarantee that I would support raising the building heights to 10 to 12 stories because they told me they could sell Jackson real estate. They salivated at the ability that they might have because he told me, I can sell anything and everything that is built in Jackson. The world is full of people who want to own a piece of Jackson. That's part of our housing problem, my friends. There are several reasons I am a conservative. And as a conservative, one of them is I'm opposed to destroying and replacing a cultural asset, which is what this is. And another reason, which really is more of an environmental asset, and sometimes they say we Republicans don't care about the environment, but I think agriculturists were the first conservationists and preservationists. Snow management is an overwhelming issue in this community. Whether we like it or not, it's an annual thing that we have to deal with, along with the annual mess with traffic. But as a community, I don't think a lot of people are aware that we have invested millions of dollars into the ponds, which ensure that the runoff runoff from the snow that's piled up here every year goes into the streams filtered so it doesn't hurt our fish. So the fair and rodeo grounds has another benefit to our community. This piece of real estate in the town of Jackson is a cultural asset. I believe it fills all 7 of the community capitals that makes for a successful and a sustainable community. We are richer as a community if we can honor our history, vision, and the way of life of those that have gone before us. This land deserves to be protected for the greater good. If it ceases to exist, we simply can't make another piece of land in downtown Jackson. I have worked with thousands of people in my time working with the university here. As I mentioned, the absolute best group has been the people that have been here at the rodeo grounds. And I think I have to still tell you that very first fair road, I remember it was Fair Board I worked with. It was Skip Ray Clark and Charlie Gaddis and Emerson Bodan. And they were sitting at the Fair Board meeting, rocking back and forth, spitting into a spittoon, and I was wide-eyed. But you know, when working with those, they were a really different kind of people, but they were cowboys, and they had the code of the West. And I have learned the code of the West living here in Jackson. It is, I don't know if many of you know, the Cowboy Code of the West is Wyoming's official ethics statement. It was adopted in 2010, and Wyoming is the first state that has adopted a cultural code of ethics as its official code of ethics. So let me end with reminding you what we as Jacksonites have as our code of ethics. 1, live each day with courage. 2, take pride in your work. 3, always finish what you start. 4, do what has to be done. 5, be tough but fair. 6, when you make a promise, keep it. 7, ride for the brand. 8, I haven't learned this one yet, talk less and listen more. Remember that some things aren't for sale. It's number 9. And number 10, know when to draw the line. And my friends, now is the time to draw the line. Thank you.
All right, Mary.
No, we're gonna give it to. That was wonderful.
Hello. We're almost done here. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Mary. My name is Rebecca Bextel, and I just wanted to lastly touch on why we are here. So Mark and Blair and I were starting to pay attention to the things happening in the town and county, and we happened to notice a curious June 7th agenda item where they were talking about a fairgrounds housing feasibility study. As we dug into it more, and there were some other things that happened, like chat with the town councilor, lunch hour, where people would say, "Are you willing to take the fairgrounds?" And they would say, "Oh yes, we're willing to do whatever we have to do for affordable housing." Well, that sounds pretty scary to me. It seems to us that in January, if we don't act now, they're going to start down the path of things like neighborhood comp plan, working with long-range planners to figure out what we can do with the rodeo grounds and fairgrounds as if we're not already doing something with them. If you look at this list here, you can see it's chock full year-round. It also feels a little bit disingenuous. If they were really serious about relocating the fairgrounds and rodeo grounds, and to be clear, Blair, Mark, and I are not for that. Wouldn't step 1 be to identify a new location, or would step 1 be to sneak through a housing survey? Or would step 1 be a neighborhood comp plan or a feasibility study? So if you do not feel like a consultant is going to be able to talk you into getting rid of these fairgrounds and rodeo grounds, we need to contact our town council and county commissioners. I think that a lot of times people just kind of get disgusted with certain things in the town and county, and so they disengage. we've met with so many old timers here in town, and we'll walk in the door. I'm not going to call your name, but you are here. But we'll walk in the door and they'll say, to hell with this place, let them take the rodeo grounds. And 30 minutes later, what it is they are so tired of fighting because they feel like they've keep losing ground, okay? We're willing to fight. And the good news is a lot of these town councilors and county commissioners won't be into office next time there's an election. So we've got that on our side. So what I would like to say is beware of these housing surveys, okay? Here's usually how it goes. Do you want more housing? Do you want free handouts? Do you want free utilities, free down payments, free rent assistance, free? Then here's how it's reported. 98% of the survey participants wanted more free stuff. What happened is the consultant said, only place to put it is the fairgrounds. We can fight back. We are going to fight back. Over my dead body, are they coming for these grounds? And we need to get this returned to the way it was. Get rid of this, get rid of these, this fire equipment. That we need to, as Mary said, put money back into the infrastructure. So I'm not, I guess for the first time in my life, I'm talking less than 5 minutes. But what we're going to do now is watch a less than or equal to 5-minute video. And then we're going to open it up to a question and answer session. Peter is the man here. And then we're going to come up with what is the solution. Thank you so much for your patience. Sorry we got started a little late tonight. Okay. Thank you.
Thing you all can look at, but over here on this wall, over here are some of the deed restrictions and maps about the original size of the fairgrounds, and not deed restrictions, but the original Homestead Act that are up there, so check that out too. And also, I would love everybody to check out the yearly fairgrounds events and how much goes on year-round, because I don't think Rachel Grimes and her team get enough credit for how much that facility and the facilities are used and the fairgrounds are used. So please check this out too.
We're going, but however, I'm going to give a brief answer, and then we're going to go to we're going to roll the videotape. Okay, let me answer the question. The first answer with respect to historic preservation, that is something that we've considered, and I'll just leave it at that. We have considered that, and that is not off the table by any means. With respect to using environmental laws or environmental protection laws, frankly, that's something, until your question, we have not considered it. But thank you for your question, and we will consider it. No. What Mary said is really important with respect to the water filtration system, and that is that snow just doesn't sit there and melt. It sits there and goes through a filtration system and then goes underneath Flat Creek Road, or whatever that's called, you can tell I'm really from here, into Carnes Meadows, and then gets into the water supply. You might, I think the answer, you can answer that by asking yourself this question. Why is that not macadam or paved over? Okay? Thank you. Peter?
All right, now we're going to do the video now. You're in public relations. We'd love your help. So see me or Rebecca or Mark afterwards. The town of Jackson is trying to move the rodeo and fairgrounds out of the heart of Jackson. And we cannot let that happen. And we need your help. Thank you so much to all of you who have already signed our petition. But if you haven't signed it yet, please, on your way out, there are tables outside both exits, and we'd love to get your signature on these petitions. And let the town of Jackson know that this is not the will of the people, and we will not let them move the heart of Jackson out of this town.
So I started rodeoing in Wilson in 1957 with Walt Callahan. 67, why I bought the rodeo with Bob McConaughey. The rodeo history lives on when I was judging. This is my daughter, Jody, here on her horse Pepper. Here she is here currying him. Whether you're a strong supporter or not, it doesn't matter. It's part of the Jackson Hole. That's why people have come to Jackson, one of the reasons.
4-H teaches kids the principle of passing it on, learning something and teaching someone else so it continues the spectrum.
4-H is about responsibility, about hard work, about building character and setting examples for others.
4-H is just such a good building block towards your future.
That makes a difference to the young people.
It has to deal with winning graciously, losing graciously.
It gets me more involved in things, so I'm not afraid to go out into the community and help out if I need to.
The youth are our next generation, and if we don't take the time to educate them, to spend time with them, to teach them morals and life skills, the next generation is going to be very scary. It's time for us to turn and recognize the kids and the youth that are doing good things rather than showing the spotlight on the ones that are not. We are starting a revolution.
Hi, my name is Haley Hardiman. I'm a 4th generation here in Jackson.
It's where we spend our entire summer. We are almost always there. Most of my greatest memories are held there. I've met some of the most amazing people through the rodeo, from tourists to contestants to judges. And so for me to see that go would just be heartbreaking. Jackson's such a unique place, and I think that the rodeo is what helps locals enjoy the Western way of life and respect it, and I think that with that being gone, I'm not sure it could ever be brought back, which is a scary thought. To me, the fairgrounds has just been a part of my life forever, and I'm not sure what I would do without it.
The thing I'd say I have to love most about 4-H is how it's just a community within itself. It's full of a lot of hardworking kids. We start when we're 8 years old, and we're taught a lot about responsibility and just the way of taking care of animals. The fairgrounds is probably one of my favorite places in Jackson because it holds so many great memories.
The fairgrounds have always meant a lot to me. They've meant a lot to the community. The community has enjoyed them. For a tourist location, it's ideal. People can walk from their motels or restaurants, take in the evening rodeo, which is Cracker Jack now, and head back to home. And there's not very many places that I know of that have the quality of rodeo that we have here today, and let alone the quality of the fair. Our fair is absolutely just the best, just the best. If you do away with the rodeo in downtown Jackson, you're not the Old West anymore. You can't even start to say it. You can't use the slogan that we're the Old West. No, you're not. You're trying to do away with the old icon part of Jackson Hole that made Jackson Hole what it is.
Some people believe in being a cowboy is to be tough, wild, and free. But to be a cowboy is so much more. It is a lifestyle, and more importantly, defined by character. It is a day, in a matter of days, out of respect, respecting the people they meet, the horses they ride and the cattle they rope, being noble, generous, and lending a helping hand to anyone with a smile on his face, being authentic to who you are and everything you stand by.
My name's Horton Spitzer. I've lived here for 40 years, ranched in Daniel for 15 years. My wife was married to Steve James. a well-known name with the old property owners here. I'm in a state of disbelief. We just came from a meeting in Pinedale to discuss the proposal of Don Ricketts building a luxury resort in Bondurant. There were about this number of people between those present and on Zoom. The Planning Commission turned down the request of Ricketts to put this on 65 acres in Bondurant. I sat there and watched everybody that spoke say they did not want it. It passed 3-2. I'm telling you this because this can happen here, and this is the time to start the campaign to save the rodeo grounds. It was interesting that one person has a gravel pit, the other person has an excavation company. Money was so blatantly used to destroy a community. Bondurant is now going to be a suburb of Jackson, and the heritage is he wants to rename it Little Jackson Hole. He claims to be a conservationist. He's very proud of his white buffalo collection. It's interesting that the fencing for white buffalo is about 7 feet tall, electrified, and no wildlife's going to be able to go through it. It's in one of the major corridors. I don't mean it really shook me. This was something that, thank you for coming, and don't expect someone else to speak up. If we all don't speak up, I don't trust our own government anymore. And what I guess the question is to use the newspaper, use town meetings, and get involved, because it's going to happen here if you don't. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, Hart.
Commissioner Mark Barron and Greg Epstein both voted against the work plan. Remember, this all starts, they don't just say, hey, we're rezoning this thing. We have to watch out for the neighborhood plans, the housing studies, the feasibility studies. Okay, both voted against the work plan, objecting to including the planning for the future of the fairgrounds in the package for the next year. Quote from Mark Barron, "It's not just 2 words. It's real people, real parents, real riding, real horses, real children, actual 4-H," he said, "and it's huge in this community." He argued that the first question to be asked is whether the fairgrounds should move, rather than considering that question along with some other uses on the property. So from what I can gather, the Teton County Commissioners are more supportive of leaving it here, but I don't know that it's going to be up to them. If they are currently holding office and they're up for re-election and they're running for the town council, we need to make sure they're not representing us any further. Okay.
I'll speak loud. Yes, just a comment. In your future microphone, okay. Can you hear me? Yes. Just a comment in your future emails and newsletters. Please identify these politicians who are the good ones and the bad ones so we know who to vote for and against. That's all.
I'm Francis Wierzeniak. Would all the city councilmen and county commissioners please stand up? Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming tonight. But those who haven't come, remember this in your next election. Thank you.
I'm Bob Culver. I have something to do with the Jackson Hole Tea Party. couple of points. I heard someone mention that News and Guide would be a resource to go to try to get publicity. They probably will not do anything to help you. You can buy all the ads you want, but they're not going to give you much coverage, and if they do, it's going to be heavily filtered. I suggest you go directly to the people through various things like this meeting, social events. We've got things coming up in the springtime, parades and things. We started pushing this last year in the Independence Day parade, and we were handing out pamphlets on Save the Rodeo Grounds. They were well received. So direct contact with the people through newsletters or paid advertising, it's expensive, or however you can do it is going to be the best way. And if you want to make Jackson Hole, Wyoming again, grab a hat.
I have one of those hats. Okay, who's next? Any more questions, comments? Jessica Sell Chambers, it looks like back here.
Thank you so much for putting this together. I think it's really informative. I am Jessica Sell Chambers. I know many of you might not expect to see me here, but I just want you to know from the council side, you may have ideas about me and my political leanings, but I want you to know that everyone is actually heard. Some of the information that was given isn't 100% accurate. One of the things that will be happening in January is just this conversation about what do we want to happen here? Not necessarily we're moving forward with anything, but to have this exact conversation. So your voices are not like falling on deaf ears, I assure you. I think we're all very open, and personally, I want to see this place protected for working class, blue collar families. And so I just want to say that when it comes to the rodeo grounds, one of my biggest concerns, and listening to Mary Martin speak earlier about people coming in here and wanting to see it change and put a botanical garden, you know, everyone has their ideas. What my fear is if working people and retirees that grew up here and don't have anywhere to go, that you will lose this cultural currency or capital that has been spoken about just through the force of working people getting pushed out of here. And that's the thing that I struggle with, but I just want you to know that it is not a done deal. The council is listening. Just know that it's not a done deal. And if you have any questions for me, I'm more than happy to answer them. I just wanted to let you all know that I am here, I am listening.
Okay, thanks. No. I'm going to respond to Ms. Chambers, because Ms. Chambers has already... All right, thank you. Okay, I'm going to respond to Ms. Jessica Sell Chambers because she's already made her position known. She is quoted in the June 9th, 2021 Jackson Hole News and Guide article as stating the follows: building housing at the current fairgrounds location seems to be the most responsible choice that's in line with concentrating density in town, she said in a text Tuesday morning. It should be sensibly dense and very affordable with as many deed restrictions as we can afford while keeping in line with our Western character. That's her position. What she said today is an effort to persuade you otherwise.
And I just want to say too, you know, it does sound good. If they just said, hey, anybody that fills out an application, we're going to give you some cash real quick, that doesn't sound very good. But if you look at who, I've actually publicly requested all of it. If you look at who's getting these handouts, they're people that were employees in San Francisco in 2020. So that's not somebody that just retired and is getting pushed out of town. It's a school administrator whose family makes $180,000 a year. They got a down payment assistance of $150,000. So that is who we are helping. Okay, we're going to take Lisa, and then we're going to do maybe one more question, and thank y'all so much.
Hi, my name is Lisa Knapp, and I own a store in town, and we deal predominantly with locals. I speak to many of you, and like Mr. Spitzer is one of our customers. We have spoken about affordable housing, and I was really shocked by what Mitch Chambers said, and I appreciate you being here. I really do, and I love to hear what you said, but it's really not accurate. We have affordable housing in town, and I can't tell you how many of those kids work for Google, are on trust funds, and all they have to do is provide a paycheck, and they brag to me about it. Okay? So, hey, Lisa, can you hire me for like a couple days a week? I just have to show that I'm making under X amount. So, I'm sorry, kind of calling bullshit on that.
Okay, you got to be last. Okay. All right. Let's one more, and then okay. You guys, then you, Sherry, and then.
My name's Terry Nelson, and you talked earlier about the slicing and dicing of the fairgrounds and how piece by piece it's being taken away. Where we sit is next on the block. The little lot next door, we used to have our food court. Is there anything we can do? Have you guys looked into that?
We're working on all of that. Thank you. Thank you.
Blair and the group, you've done a wonderful presentation for all of us tonight. Thanks, Skippy. But what I want to know is what can we as a group do, and what can we individually do to help you?
Thank you, Sherry. Yes. All right. Mary wants to say a last word, and then we'll give you all our call. Oh, we got to let Phil. All right, Phil.
I just want to say thank you for all of you coming here today and trying to preserve what we do have in this community as our history, as our heritage. You got to remember, my great-grandparents brought the first settlers in here in 1889. I've seen a lot of our history and all of that lost. I can show you a lot of it that's been lost. We don't have it. We did away with it. You'll never get it back again, guys. This is part of our history that we have over here. And by the way, your city and your county joined in 2010 Preserve America. Now, where are they at? This is what you call preserving America right over here next to us. Do you realize the potential that this piece of property has as what it is? I told them, the city council and the county commissioners, you could line this street down here with items that came from this community that were historic, so when you went by, you could see a little of the history of Jackson Hole. So there's a tremendous amount of potential in this piece of property as history, as historic, and we need to preserve it. Can you imagine the people here, all of my ancestors, if they'd heard what you're trying to do with the piece of property they put sweat and equity into? Look down here at when you go into Albertsons, look at Starbucks, but don't buy the coffee. Oh, never mind. But look at over there at Starbucks and look up on the wall at that picture in 1930. Guess what? There's the bleachers there. There's a rodeo grounds there. There's a racetrack there. Those people put that on there for a reason, okay? And we need to keep it the way it is and keep our heritage, what we have. We don't need to lose our heritage like a lot of the heritage of my family has been destroyed or lost or taken out of our community. Let's just put it that way. We need to stand for what is right in our community as old timers here and as young timers, because this is your history too. What do you think makes Jackson Hole here? You know, it is our history. Our mayor, our fine mayor, gave a speech here this last week to the Chamber of Commerce. Get on there and listen to it. What did she say keeps people coming to Jackson Hole? Our history. That's what brings people here. Last of the Old West, the Jackson Hole Rodeo, that fairgrounds, the whole thing is what brings people here to our community. And believe it or not, it makes our community money. And we can use that money to develop other things in our community. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Julie's the last one.
So sorry. I just want to say something. I lived in Big Sky for a long time, and way before it got overrun the way it is now. And then all the developers of Big Sky keep saying, we're going to be Jackson in 20 years. We're going to be Jackson in 20 years. Well, they're building a rodeo right now, okay? They have a rodeo ground. They want to be us. They're never going to be us. They're a manufactured town. I love Big Sky, but it's not Jackson. You take away the rodeo ground? Are you kidding me? I mean, this is what we are. I mean, the whole symbol of the state of Wyoming is a Bronco cowboy. And I think that photo was taken here in Jackson. So the video is right, you're right. You take away the rodeo ground, you take away the West. So I just want to say, don't ruin it. I mean, don't take it away. People want to be us.
All right, well now all right, Skip Wright Clark, yes, all right. Here we go.
Thank you. Just to straighten one thing out at Fair Board meetings, Mary, I didn't spit. That was Charlie and Emerson. Look, let's be honest. We live in the crown jewel of America. Yellowstone, Grand Teton National Park, and Jackson Hole are the crown jewel of North America. And we don't need to screw it up. The present politics in this county want to screw it up because they want the money. I'm going to step on a few toes here. It's about money. Affordable housing, affordable wages, no. But get more people through here and we're going to kill the goose that laid the golden egg. And we're not going to be the crown jewel of America anymore. So let's think about that. That's where votes come in, and that's where money comes in to support these people who have really busted their butts to put this together. And I respect them, and I'm going to support them, and I hope everybody in this room will. And that's the only way we're going to win this fight.
All right, Mary is our last speaker, and then I promise we'll get you to how you can help us.
Thank you. I didn't want to say this, but I'm going to. Many of you may remember Stella McKinstry. She was my mentor for a lot of years. She was the extension agent in Sublette County. She was born here on a homestead up in Elk, Wyoming, which is kind of now where current-day Moran was, and her father was the first county assessor for Teton County. The museum did a exhibition when we celebrated our big birthday for the town of Jackson, because her mother kept a diary. And I met her, Harold and Sally, and they told me when they came to Jackson there was no place to live. So that was back in the 1920s. When I came in 1975, housing was a real issue. Seems like everyone you talk to, housing is a real issue. I think of all of the affordable and attainable and workforce housing projects that we have built in Jackson. I don't think we can ever build enough. We can't create more land, but we can fix who gets affordable and attainable and workforce housing. So I want to thank Jessica Sal Chambers for coming because it took a lot of courage. And I think what we need to as a community have honest dialogue about what Jackson is for us. And we don't let those that are moving here that want to be, we've got we call them now the digital cowboys. We never thought about having people who could choose to live and work here and actually work in Paris, but have, a house on Millward and call it home, because technology has changed the nature of our community. If we give up the things that allow us to be community, we're just going to be a bunch of rooms to live in. And that is my thing I wanted to say, because I saw a picture of Stella, and I wanted to remember there was no place in the inn for them in the 1900s. And so the idea that I get to come to Jackson and I should have a smorgasbord of kind of housing that I want to live in is really unrealistic. I would like to be a ballerina.
All right, and then there's one more comment, because Bob Lucas
Yeah, I'm Bob Lucas. Did I understand that the Fair Board gets a 1 mil levy?
We used to have a 1 mil levy, but when Jolene Coons was still county clerk, they took some of that mil and put it in the Parks and Rec budget.
Do you know what sorry to be ignorant, but I don't know.
I know that I fussed about it when they did that, because there was a time when the Fair Board had a cushion, or they had savings to try to build and expand and build on this facility. And that was taken away when they no longer get a mil. That was a choice of our electors.
Well, 1 mil amounts to a lot of money. I do know that. After Mark talked about the reality of moving the fairgrounds, why it might be a good idea for all of us to try to talk to all of the Fair Board members and make sure that they have a reality check on that possibility of moving it anywhere. For the points that he brought up, I think that 2026 is going to come around real quick, and who knows if ever. I think it's very slim chance that they would actually come up with a piece of property and actually be able to move it here in Teton County. Good idea.
All right, and now finally we're going to get to the promised calls to action and how you can help us all. So let me just, Rebecca, you stand with. All right. We have a lot of ways that you can help us. First, we need you to contact our county commissioners and our town council and let them know that there's no need to waste taxpayers' money on a study to examine other uses for the fairgrounds, such as affordable housing. Tell them that we want what the fairgrounds and rodeo mean to you and why it cannot be used for other purposes. Make sure, I think most of you gave us your email information when you came in, but just make sure we have that so we can keep you up to date on calls to action. We will also make sure that you have all of our local politicians' emails and how to contact them. Harper, will you do me a favor and show us our beautiful yard signs? And Abby or Chauncey, will you grab one of the bumper stickers and show them? But we'd love for you to grab a yard sign, especially if it's somewhere where a lot of people can see it, and put this up on your yards. We also have bumper stickers, and they're the nice kind. They're like vinyl, and they can peel really nice off your car. You don't have to scrape them hard off, so you can put them on your windows and stuff. So yeah, they work on windows, so please grab some of those. So everywhere our local politicians go, they'll see the will of the people. So please grab those on your way out. Also, Peter, our group is trying to film as many people and their stories and their memories of the fairgrounds and the rodeo. So we'd love it if you'd like to contact us and be filmed and share why this property, why the fairgrounds and rodeo are important to you. So please contact us about that, because we'd love to get you on film and preserve those memories. The other thing is we'd love to have you sign our petition at SaveTheRodeoGrounds.com. Also, if you'd like to donate, you can do that at SaveTheRodeoGrounds.com also. And we have a big group here, but not everybody's here. So we ask you, please, to tell your friends, your family, your neighbors. Let them, since we've now kind of gotten all the same page on what the facts are and what's going on, we need to let as many people in the town and county know what's happening. So please share this information. Get them to get to our website to sign our petition, to give us our emails so that they can join us in these calls to action. And the other thing is, we'd love it if you'd follow us on social media. We are on Facebook and Instagram. Anything else, David? Are we on anything else? No,
Thanks, David, too.
Yeah, and thank you to David Sher, because he's been running our social media. So thank you, David. So we are on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us at Save the Rodeo Grounds on both of those. So please follow us there. And then finally, we are going to, in November, this coming up November 2022, we would like you all to vote. and we are going to make this fairgrounds and rodeos an election issue. So we need as many people to get out there and vote in November. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
And one last thing, I was actually getting my hair cut today, and the lady coming after me was saying that there's no way they can take the rodeo grounds because there's a deed restriction. And so that's why we did the presentation tonight. Half of our battle has been trying to convince people in our community that the threat is real. So it would be super helpful if you trust us, if you trust the facts, then maybe let people know about that.
And just finally, Mark, Rebecca, and I will be around here if you need to talk, and Mary, but we just love you all to talk, and share stories. And Lisa Knapp let me know, thank you, that we should tell you how much we're raising. We're going to try and raise $10,000 to say, yes, we are going to try and raise $10,000 to save this rodeo and fairground. So help us do that. Thanks.